Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are having a fantastic day. So today's upload is going to be a video about the potential for several systems that could be making their way towards the US. One of them least or less snowy, while the other two could be pretty snowy. So let's just jump right into this. Consider liking the video, consider subscribing to the channel if you like these type of videos, if you like this weather content. I do these videos basically every day. Sometimes even 2 a day. You know, if you're new to this channel, go check it out. Go watch this video. Browse through the channel and decide for yourself. If you're a recurring viewer, it would be nice if you could subscribe. So thank you for that. So let's look at the GFS model run. The GFS is a global forecasting system, and you notice that the thing is, guys, the storm systems will be occurring. That seems pretty likely. You know, the placement and timing of them are really anything but, I guess, confirmed. I mean, there are some indications towards the long range that we could be looking at a warmer pattern. But, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen two models disagree more than the GFS and your European into long range. So we'll talk about that a little bit maybe towards the end of the video. But right now, let's talk about the winter storms. So we have a clipper that goes through the upper Midwest. Notice Minnesota, Wisconsin, UP of Michigan, northern Michigan get a little bit of snow. And then that's followed by a pretty large system, moisture laden, basically indicating that the Gulf of Mexico is open for business, and this brings up a lot of moisture. No snow with this one for the Northeast. That's a given. Basically, doesn't seem like there will be any snow for the Northeast. That's significant, unless you're in the higher elevations. Notice, though, there's another low pressure over here, which really is the one that kind of initially brings some of this precip up, while another one develops inside of this moisture blob. This second one has a little band of snow that's actually pretty powerful and pretty intense, and that could leave a little bit of snow for northern Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana area. And remember, I've been already saying this for a couple of days. It's actually held itself together, that little system right there, that kind of a little bit of snow across northern Illinois. Notice anywhere else, though, just rain. I mean, seriously, even in the higher elevations of Maine and Vermont, it's really just a rain event. Then we get that gets passed through. We get a little bit of a cooler shot of air. Nothing too significant, really, but it's there enough to propagate this other storm to become pretty intense across Kansas City, Illinois, Iowa. Notice it drops quite a bit of snow. This would be not an overall intense storm, but it would be pretty strong in the sense that it's small and compact, and the snowfall rates would definitely be there enough to, you know, drop several inches, if not up to, you know, half a foot or even more. So after that, we get a very nice cool shot of air, which actually the European and GFS agree on. It's just that the long range is just a little bit confusing to see to say the very least. But let's look at the total snowfall accumulations. Notice that across this corridor of Kansas City, Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, we get quite a dose of snow. We get 8, 9, 7, 5. I mean, we get overall close to almost a foot of snow in these locations. And again, some of that snow across northern Illinois and Wisconsin will be from that first system, maybe 2 to 3 inches from that little first thing on Saturday. Then we get that bigger system, and you can see that drops quite a bit of snow as well. And then let's go back to the MSLP precip rain and frozen, which is what we were looking at. Let's wait for this to load, and notice we get a nice cool shot of air. This kind of maintains itself for quite a while. We get some warm air starting to push back in here. We get a little bit of cold air still on the northeast side. We can notice that there's like a polar vortex like thing right across southeastern Canada. This would be probably associated with very cold temperatures, and yes, the below average temperatures would be very significant. That's pretty easy to see based on the surface map with the isobars in that arrangement. If you look into time, we notice another system kind of takes opportunity of this opening of this Gulf of Mexico opening. As notice, the cold air is really up to the north, centered across Canada, while the Gulf of Mexico is open, and this is what the storm takes advantage of. Brings quite a bit of moisture across these locations. Wouldn't be overly intense across the Midwest, but it could intensify once it gets to the Northeast. Again, this is very far out, but it has been showing itself on the weather models for quite some time now, which is really impressive. The GFS has been showing things that the other weather models aren't too sure about for a long time, and it's been consistent with this over a course of many days, which is unusual for the GFS, but it's you know, the weather models, when they hook onto something, it's hard for them to switch it, even if it's in the relative long range. They're sometimes really stubborn, and up to the day of the storm, they could be very confusing and throwing off. Notice then we get a nice warm-up around Christmas time. Actually, this is what the GFS is showing, but then we get another cool down right after with another potential storm system. Whether or not that will occur, that is just unknown, because let me tell you, the European is showing a completely different scenario. I mean, completely different scenario. So it's showing the storms. Let's look at the Canadian. The Canadian is quite similar to the GFS up until a couple of hours. So notice, up until, I meant to say, a couple of hours of the ending of the forecast. Notice that we get that clipper, we get that moisture-laden system, not showing that snow across northern Illinois, Wisconsin, or Indiana. But you know, that could definitely still change, but we'll see how it handles that. It's a little bit, again, still a little bit ways away. Notice that the Canadian does show that system across the Midwest, just way too far to the south. I mean, the moisture is basically across southern Missouri, northern Oklahoma, Kansas, and then it tries moving it up the East Coast, but doesn't really intensify it too much. But it definitely has a storm, just in a different placement. I mean, completely different placement. I mean, this disagreement going on here is significant, and yes, we're a week away, but you know, it's tough to say which model at this point is right. I mean, literally, we can't say which one is right at this point. It's just too far out. You know, I was watching the Weather Channel, and they were talking about this, and they were showing both systems, and they just said, yeah, a good chance of either happening, and I would say that's a pretty good job by them. Notice we get a little bit of warming that the Canadian shows, and doesn't have the cold air as intrusive as what the GFS has. So that is already a change, and that could be, you know, set a different stage for the second system, which is Canadian barely shows anything of anything at all across these parts of the country. And if you look at the European model, it shows a completely different scenario, something we haven't seen in quite a while, some pretty warm temperatures. Now, if you recall, I called for a cold December and snowy December. It seems like if that will be up until, you know, the first 20 days, but after that, we may be looking at a warming pattern. So yes, if it does warm up, I definitely got that wrong. I did not expect that warm up to occur, but again, I admit to my mistakes on this Weather Channel, and people know I do. People have been watching me. If you recall, I got the September month wrong. I thought it would be a rather month on a chillier side, while it was pretty darn warm. December, you know, it was very chilly. We had several Arctic outbreaks. But it seems like it will maintain its chilliness up until like the 20th, but then it could lose some of that. Notice we get a couple of resurgence of cold air. Even the European shows this. December 15th, 17th, 18th. But then we start getting this anomalous ridging, which you could see introduces some fairly warm temperatures across the country. This would be really unprecedented amounts. You could see the 570. This would definitely be some warmer colors, or warmer temperatures indicated by these colors. And if you look at the ensemble members of the European model, notice that they're showing similar stuff. I mean, they're showing a little bit of cold now, up until basically, again, the 20th of December, while after that, notice you can see that resurgence, but after that, it looks as if it could really start warming up across these portions of the country. And if you look at the 8 to 14 day outlook, The Climate Prediction Center isn't kidding around with this. They're just putting blatantly warmer temperatures across a good portion of the country, which may or may not be true. I mean, if you look at the GFS, they're completely in a disagreement. Look at the 6 to 10 day outlook, still showing a little bit of chilly temperatures across the east, but the 8 to 14 has just completely lost that. So that would be interesting to see if that occurs. Again, if you look at the GEFS ensembles, completely different story. Basically a way warmer pattern. Temperatures seem to be on a cooling trend. Yes, there will be several warm-ups, but nothing to the extent of the European. So you have to understand at what position this puts me in as a amateur weather enthusiast. Really, it's tough, as I've seen these situations before, and we've seen that the European has done these things before, and it has been right. However, we've seen before that the European hasn't been right, and it really is just, we'll have to refine it in the next couple of days. You know, the European has been stubborn with what it's showing, so has the GFS, so they lately have been very stubborn with what they're showing. I mean, right now, again, even about that individual storm system, it's tough to say which one's going to be more right. But notice, this one introduces the GFS, a little bit of warm air. I mean, just nothing to the extent of what the European does, though. Just for maybe 2-3 days, and then cool air starting to intrude back in. While if you look at the EPS, which is European ensemble members, it's different, stark different. Notice, look at that. Even across this 19th, 18th, 16th time frame, we see just warm temperatures across much of the northern continent. Now that seems a little bit too aggressive, in my opinion. That seems a little bit unrealistic, but we'll just have to wait and see what it does with that. If we go look at the GFS models, and let's just look at the total snowfall for the next good chunk of time, notice that this is kind of including that second system, which could hit the Northeast pretty hard, again, if this even were to occur. But you can see the snowfall amounts across the U.S. would be still relatively high. I want to emphasize something, guys. Just because December would be on the warmer side doesn't mean that there would be no snow. I mean, last year, December, if you remember, it was cold, it was warm, but it still produced quite a bit of snow across the upper Midwest and plains. So it's just more confined to the northern locations, but there still would be plenty of storms, so don't worry about that. But seriously, it seems right now we're in a kind of a state of confusion, and we'll just have to see what I guess the future brings. Because right now I can't tell you much. If you look at the ECMWF, the European, basically the red colors is anything below 32 degrees. So you can see there's a good chunk of them kind of active, even when it's supposed to be above average, which is in this part around the December 21st time frame. It's above average, but again, the average is cold, so that's that. I thank you guys so much for watching. Consider liking the video, consider subscribing to the channel. I'll catch you all guys in the next episode. See ya. Bye.